Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Miranda and I am the Enchantress of Avalon. For this video, we are going to be discussing Gothic romantic villains. So I think this is going to be a really fun topic. I do a lot of Gothic romance content here on my channel, so I hope you'll enjoy. So, the topic at hand is why we love Gothic villains. Okay. Obviously, it's very common to read a book and realize that you actually prefer the villain character to the protagonist, or at least to another masculine lead, especially when we're talking Gothic romance. Sometimes we're sitting there reading this book and the hero character seems very, very dull. And why is the female lead going to end up with this very, very dull character? And that's kind of what inspired this video for me. I will note that two of the characters I'm going to discuss are actually male protagonists, but they have all the trappings of a classic villain in some ways. Fun. So, firstly, I'm just going to list off the characters I'm going to touch upon. It's Eric from the Phantom of the Opera, Dracula, Mr. Rochester from Jane Eyre, and of course, Heathcliff from Wuthering Heights. Now, why do we love villains? It's pretty obvious to anyone who's had a little bit of a background in psychology. We like bad boys. And this can be you like bad boys because you have a romantic thrill from a bad boy character, but it's also just a vicarious thrill. If you aren't romantically attracted to a character of this sex or to someone of that sex, you might have just the thrill of this character is doing things I wish I could do. It's that clicking in with your shadow, and you might have urges to do these things, but you wouldn't do them. But it's very, very satisfying to watch a character, to read a character, or if it's a film, watch a character that is doing these things. But why do people who have this romantic or sexual thrill from reading about these characters feel this way? Because obviously these characters are doing atrocious things. Even in the case of Rochester and Heathcliff, who are technically male lead protagonist romantic heroes, they're still doing atrocious things. Why are we attracted to this? If it is you're sexually attracted to a character or a person who's doing this? Well, first of all, basic female psychology, or just psychology of anyone who's attracted to this type of a figure, is you want to be the one they'll change for. It's just like with a bad boy in real life. You want to be the one person that this person is willing to change for. Oh, he's a philanderer, he's a playboy, but he'll stop his philandering for me. Or I'm the reason he's going to stop doing these horrible things. That's one reason that we like these characters. The second is pretty basic evolutionary reasoning, and that's the fact that we know instinctively that this person can care for us. And if you are a woman who is attracted to men, there's an instinctive knowing that this person could care for not only you, but any future children you may have. Now, you may not want children. On an intellectual level, you may have decided you don't want children, but there's that just instinctual part of us that knows that if we were to have children, this man could protect us. That's the attraction to someone who has a little bit of an antisocial, or villainous, in the case of this terminology of the video, bent to them. And it's why we get a thrill from characters who are technically villains. It's why we want them to possibly end up with the heroines of these stories. I certainly would have preferred that Mina ended up with Dracula and that Christine ended up with Eric, the Phantom of the Opera. I've talked about that a lot. I understand that those relationships aren't healthy. I get it. But I still do want those characters together. In the realm of the story, I want those characters together. It is how it is. I think that they are better matches than the men that they ended up with, that's for sure. And even I think that they could take care of these women better than the men they ended up with. Because it is an era when, these were written in an era when women only had a little bit of real agency and power in the world. And who you were married to did dictate a lot of what your life would become. So this whole idea of a man protecting you wasn't just, it's nice to have someone protect me, like in the modern day. It's nice that someone would want to, and it's kind of a nice feeling. It's, I literally need someone to, because I don't have the power and the sovereignty in this society that I could have. So when we look at it from this lens, we can see them in a very different light. It tells a lot about us as people, not just about the characters themselves. It's really rooted in our own psychological makeup and our own desires, and even a little bit in our own shadow desires, these desires that we don't necessarily want to admit we have, but we very much have them. And I think it's healthy to vicariously live through villainous figures if you're someone who isn't on that romantic end of it and you just think that it's really fun to read this story and it's really fun to think about what it would be like to live out those actions. You would never do them in your life, but it's healthy to have that play out as a vicarious thing in literature or in film or television, however you're getting your media. I personally think it's healthy. It's just like, I think watching horror films is a healthy thing because we're getting to go through the full range of emotions in a safe space. We know we aren't actually in physical danger of being killed, but we get to vicariously live those emotions and process those emotions in a safe space. I think looking at vicariously living through villains when we're reading literature or watching a film where we really have a connection to that villain is a healthy way to process some of those shadow parts of ourselves. And it works the same way if we are romantically feeling any sort of romantic attraction to this villainous character, because we are safely processing this attraction to a dark figure. And why are we being sexually thrilled by a dark figure who is a murderer, who is this horrible figure in a safe space? Because we aren't physically in this space with someone who has killed people, with someone who could do absolutely atrocious things. We just get to live vicariously through the heroine of the story. And yeah, we get to wish that this heroine is ending up with the villain, or sometimes she does end up with this villainous character. And that brings us to Heathcliff and Rochester. In Wuthering Heights and in Jane Eyre, by two of the Bronte sisters. Obviously, Wuthering Heights was written by Emily Bronte and Jane Eyre was written by Charlotte Bronte. We get two examples of Byronic heroes, which we would call them antiheroes today. But there's something else deeper in there than just being an antihero, because they have a little bit more of a villainous edge than a traditional antihero would. Rochester, we learn, literally locked his first wife in an attic because she went mad and tried to burn down the house. But there's an ambiguity to it. And actually, there have been great novels written that are unofficial prequels to Jane Eyre, trying to get into the mind of his first wife. And was it actually her going insane, or did Rochester just tire of her and that's what drove her mad, that he was pushing her away and didn't want to be with her anymore? And it's very intriguing to delve into that. And it's the question over, is Rochester really just a Byronic antihero, or is he a little bit more villainous in nature? He certainly lies and deceives throughout the bulk of the book, but he does get to end up with Jane Eyre. That famous line of, "Reader, I married him." They do get to end up together happily. In Wuthering Heights, Heathcliff is certainly a Byronic hero, but he does do really terrible things. He is cruel, he is violent, and it doesn't really confirm that he's killed people, but we can assume that he would very happily kill people. He says as much, that he would have happily killed Hindley Earnshaw, but he instead just let him drink himself to death. He fell into a bottle and never got out. But he would have happily killed Hindley Earnshaw. I'm sure he would have happily killed Edgar Linton as well. But instead, he went with what can be considered a kind of darker form of revenge. Instead, he married Edgar's sister, and he took his revenge in that way. He treated Edgar's sister terribly, and this was all because Edgar had married the woman that he loved, and the woman that loved him too. Catherine always loved Heathcliff. They were meant to be together, which is why they ended up together, haunting the moors at the end of the novel. In death, they finally got to be together. And I find this to be an utterly beautiful and romantic ending. They both had really dark aspects to their characters, but they fit perfectly together. And in the case of Wuthering Heights, you get a character in Catherine that isn't this traditionally very, very good protagonist. She has a lot of flaws. She has a lot of cruelty in her nature. And in that way, we have a balance being struck between Catherine and Heathcliff that has the reader rooting for them. At least for me, it does. I definitely root for them. But I think Heathcliff plays on the same principle of, he's this bad boy character that we just can't help but get a bit of a thrill from. Whether it's wishing you could romantically be with someone like Heathcliff, or wishing you could be someone like Heathcliff. So anyway, this is going to be the close of the video, and I hope you have enjoyed what I have discussed here. If you did enjoy the video, please like, comment, subscribe, and check out my blog, whatroseofavalon.life. I will link a couple of blog posts in the description that relate to the topic at hand. And I also do have a Discord server, and that is always linked in the description box of all of my videos, should you want to come and chat with me on my Discord server. Have a very fabulous Morbid Monday, everyone. Bye now.